Hello all, my name is Ayush Bisai from grade 8 and now we'll be learning chapter 2 of our science book, that is Microorganisms, Friend and Foe. So in this chapter we'll be learning about microorganisms, what are microbes, what are pathogens, how they cause diseases and what are their uses and how they act as a friend and how they act as disease causing pathogens too. Okay, let's get started. So first we have to know what are microorganisms. So the organisms which are very small and cannot be seen normally by an unaided human eye is called microorganisms. What are organisms? A group of organs or any type of living beings which stays alive. So we know bacteria. Bacteria are a type of microorganisms. So where we can see the patches we can see on moist bread it gets spoiled. In rainy season we can see through a magnifying glass, so we'll come to know there are tiny organisms which keep on moving. So we will come to know that water and soil, not only water and soil but the whole environment is filled with tiny organisms, and they are of different types and we cannot normally see them with our unaided eye. We specially need a microscope for seeing bacteria, fungus, etc. So there are mainly four groups of microorganisms, that is bacteria, fungi, protozoa and algae. So these are the four major groups. We can see algae, we learned it in the last 2 years that these are greenish type of fungus which float on water, and protozoa is the reason why we get dengue and malaria. And fungus, we know that it grows on food substances when it's left in moist air, and bacteria causes tuberculosis, etc. We know. Viruses are also a type of microscopic organisms, but the difference between these all are that microorganisms are of the size of bacteria, but viruses are much more smaller than bacteria and all. Even viruses cause diseases in bacteria too. That small viruses are. That's why they are mainly not in a group of organisms. How they bacteria and fungi are subdivided. And another main thing is that viruses reproduce and act as a living being when they're inside a host cell. That is, viruses only reproduce and act as a living being, give symbols or signs that they are living inside any cell. But when they are simply on any ground where they are not inside a cell, they act as a non-living thing. And this is the only special characteristic for viruses. Okay, now that we'll move forward and see the diseases and where microorganisms live. Now we have to know where do microorganisms live. But microorganisms are there in every place in this environment. There's not even a single place in this environment where bacteria or any type of microorganisms are not present. Because microorganisms are single-celled like bacteria, algae or protozoa, they mostly are found in every place, and even there are multicellular like algae and fungi which could be also found in many natural and biological processes. So that's why they live in all types of environment, ranging from ice cold areas like mountainous, or they can even live in deep inside of volcanoes in that much hot temperature too. Even viruses and bacteria can live inside the human body, and there are also some organisms which only freely exist. So they don't have any particular place. They are present in every single area. Like how we saw, there are tiny millions of tiny bacteria present in water and soil. Okay, so we have to know what microorganisms have a relation with us. So first we will see the positive relation. So microorganisms have a very important role many of our industries and in our life too. So there are many friendly microorganisms. So how are they friendly? They can be used in making curd or bread, in increasing soil fertility, or used in making vaccines, or used in making medicines, etc. So first, making of curd. We know that no, bacteria is used in making of curd. So bacterium called lactobacillus promotes the formation of curd. So when we churn milk, this type of virus grows, that is lactobacillus, and then it converts the churned milk into curd. This is how curd is made. And even we have seen how bacteria is involved in making of cheese, pickles, and etc., and how rava, suji, idlis, and bhatures are also made with the help of this. Another very common type of usage of microorganisms in the use of making food is called yeast. We know that when we take maida and soak it in water and keep it for a long time, yeast reproduces and grows and makes the batter more voluminous, because of which the yield becomes more better. And then we can see the commercial use. The microorganisms are very largely used in production of alcohol, wine, and acetic acid, that is vinegar. And we know how yeast is also used in commercial production of alcohol. Also, yeast is used. So yeast is a very common usage in commercial market. Sometimes used in making of bread, sometimes in making of cakes, sometimes in making of alcohol, etc. Now, we will see what is fermentation. Louis Pasteur first discovered fermentation. So, alcohol, the smell of alcohol is as sugar, and it has been converted into alcohol by yeast. So, that is, sugar is converted into alcohol by yeast through a process called fermentation. Now, the medicinal use of microorganisms. So, microorganisms don't only give us diseases, but they are also a cure of diseases. So whenever we fall ill and we go to the doctor, we see that they give us antibiotic tablets, capsules, or injections to us. And one good example is penicillin, and that is one of the first type of medicine or antibiotic that was given. And the source of these medicines is microorganisms. These medicines kill or stop the growth of the disease-causing microorganisms, and such medicines are called antibiotics. These days, a number of antibiotics are being produced from bacteria and fungi. Examples are streptomycin, tetracycline, and anthromycin are some of the commonly used antibiotics which are made from fungi and bacteria. And these antibiotics are manufactured from specific microorganisms. It's not like there will be they can use any type of microorganisms for the production of antibiotics. There are specific microorganisms which are used for a variety of diseases. And antibiotics are also mixed with the food of livestock and poultry to check that is any microbial infection in the animal, because they can't tell us, so we only have to take care by giving them time to time these antibiotics. And we should always take caution and precautions for antibiotics too. That is, we should not take antibiotics without the advice of any qualified doctor. We should always take antibiotics when a qualified doctor has told, because as antibiotics are made from we know that it's made from microorganisms. Vaccine is another medicinal use which is caused from microorganisms. So when a causing microbe enters our body, it reproduces antibodies to fight the invader. What are antibodies? Antibodies are type of fighting cells which are produced to fight that disease. So there is always a very they make the virus very they make it dead, or very its power is reduced, because of which it cannot harm our body. But when it's given into our body, then the antibodies start to be made, and in case any time in the future the disease attacks us, these antibodies can keep us alive and fight against it. So the weakened microbes are introduced into a healthy body, and then the body fights and kills the invading bacteria anytime in the future. So many diseases like cholera, tuberculosis, smallpox, hepatitis, and all can be prevented from vaccination. And Edward Jenner was the discoverer of a vaccine for smallpox first in 1798. We all have given injections to protect ourselves from many diseases, and one of the main is the polio vaccine. The polio drops given to children are actually a vaccine, and they have saved many lives. One of the most important is increasing soil fertility. We have learned about rhizobium bacteria in last year. how they increase the nitrogen quantity in the soil, and also increases its fertility. These microbes are commonly called biological nitrogen fixers, and they help very nicely. Cleaning the environment. The main work of the microorganisms in the environment is acting as decomposers. We know in the food chain that after everyone has finished the food chain, at the end comes the decomposer. It decomposes that any organism which is left on the earth, and these take places when the microorganisms feeds on the dead animals or any unrequired substance on the ground. So after this, all the nutrients is released, and then it's again mixed with the soil. So again the food chain occurs. So decomposers play a vital part in cleaning up the environment, in which all the unwanted substances they breed on, and they convert it into useful substances for the formation of again for the production of plants and etc. We can see that the name of the chapter is given microorganisms friend and foe, and foe means our enemy. So it doesn't only act as a helper, but it's also one of the enemies of the humankind and humanity, and that is microorganisms. The microorganisms which cause diseases, or the disease causing microorganisms, are called pathogens. So pathogens may spread from spoiled food, consuming of spoiled food, cloth and leather which is also spoiled, etc. Using can cause viral infections or fungal infections, etc. So disease causing microorganisms in humans are communicable diseases. We in grade 4 or grade 5 learned communicable and non-communicable diseases. So non-communicable diseases are caused by the loss of vitamin or any type of protein, etc. from the body. But these type of communicable diseases are caused from viruses and microorganisms called like pathogens. So microbial diseases that can spread from an infected person to a healthy person through air, water, food, or any physical contact are called communicable diseases. Examples for this is cholera, common cold, chickenpox, and tuberculosis, etc. When a person suffering from cold sneezes, the fine droplets of from his nose or from his mouth is spreads thousands of viruses. The fine droplets of the moisture which come out from our sneezing carries thousands of viruses which spread in the air. And if any healthy person inhales it or while breathing it, then it causes an infection in him. There are some insects or animals which act as carriers. What are carriers? They carry diseases in them and then transmit it. Some examples are housefly. Housefly is one such disease causing carrier. The flies sit on the garbage and animal etc. And pathogens stick to their body. When these flies sit on any uncovered food, then these only pathogens again come out and they get stick on the food, and then we may inhale it. This is a type of carrier. Another is Anopheles mosquito, female Anopheles mosquito, which is a parasite and which carries the malaria, phasmophobia, uh, plasmodium, and it's malaria. So now we know that female anopheles mosquito, they go, and again the parasite of malaria which is plasmodium gets attached to the body, and again when they come and sit in our hands or anywhere, then they get transmitted to our body. This is how malaria happens. Even female Aedes mosquito is a carrier of dengue virus. So this is how dengue and malaria happen. So it's always wanted that you don't sit or be near any stagnant water, because mosquitoes breed in water, and hence being near them means mosquitoes will come to us and we can get the virus. Hence one should not let water collect anywhere, like in coolers, tires, flower pot, etc. By keeping the surroundings clean and dry, we can prevent mosquitoes from breeding, and by these measures we can also stop malaria and dengue. Now we will be seeing some of the common viruses and diseases that happens in microorganisms. So these are some of the common examples of disease causing diseases in humans. and these are of course caused by microorganisms. So this is TB, that is tuberculosis, and that is caused by bacteria, and it is transmitted from air. So we know how it's transmitted through air. Anyone has TB and then he sneezes, and again his fine droplets of virus or bacteria, when it's inhaled by a healthy person, it's taken. And the preventive measures taken generally are to keep the patient in complete isolation, and the personal belongings of the patients are kept away from healthy persons. And vaccination should be given to the suitable age of people to be protected against TB, that is tuberculosis. Next is measles. Measles is caused by viruses, and it's again through air. And the same thing, the same precautionary measures are taken which was taken for tuberculosis. Chickenpox. Chickenpox is very common, and it's also caused by viruses, and it's through air or any contact of the person with another healthy person. And even in this, the person should be kept in complete isolation, and it's by contact, so that he should not be let to come to a healthy person's area. Polio vaccines are given as we told, and polio is caused by viruses, and it is spread through air and water. And again, the patient should be in complete isolation, and also vaccination should be given for that. Cholera is caused by bacteria, and it spreads through water or food, like contaminated food or through water. And people should maintain personal hygiene and good sanitary habits, and consume properly cooked food and boiled drinking water. And even vaccination should be given for cholera and typhoid. Typhoid is also has happened by bacteria, and that is through drinking contaminated water. Hepatitis A. Hepatitis A is caused by protozoa, and mosquitoes nets should be used, as we know that most of the protozoas which cause diseases in humans happen due to the transmission of carriers through mosquitoes. So mosquito nets and repellents should be used, and insecticides and all should, and the breeding should be controlled of mosquitoes by not allowing water to collect in our surroundings. Next is malaria. Malaria is caused by viruses, and it transmits through water. So drinking unboiled water or drinking contaminated water can cause hepatitis A, and even vaccination can be given for this. Now we'll be seeing some of the common diseases in plants and animals. Now we will be seeing the disease caused by microorganisms in animals and plants. So there are several organisms that not only cause disease in humans and plants, but also in other animals. For example, anthrax. Anthrax is a dangerous human and cattle disease caused by a bacterium called Bacillus anthracis. And foot and mouth disease of cattle is also caused by a virus. And Robert Koch in 1876 discovered the bacterium Bacillus anthracis, which causes the anthrax disease. And disease causing micro in plants, there are several organisms which cause disease in plants like wheat, rice, potato, sugarcane, orange, apple, and many others. The disease reduces the yield, that is, and the quality of crops too. There are many viruses, but some of the most known and common plant diseases are citrus canker, which happens in citrus fruits, and it's caused by bacteria, and the mode of transmission is through air. And the second is rust of wheat, which happens in the plant of wheat, and it's through fungus, and it happens through it transmits through air and seeds which have fungus in them. And the last is yellow vein mosaic of bhindi, that's okra, and it is caused by bacteria, and it is the mode of transmission is insects, and insects means it's a type of carrier which carry virus. Now we'll be seeing food poisoning. So Bujo was one day invited to one of his friends, and he ate a variety of foodstuffs. But on reaching the home, he started vomiting and had to be taken to the hospital. The doctor said that the condition could be due to food poisoning. Food poisoning could be due to the consumption of food spoiled by some microorganisms. Microorganisms that grow on our food sometimes produce toxic substances. These make the food poisonous, causing serious illness and even death. So it is very important that we preserve food to prevent it from being spoiled. And now that's why we'll be seeing food preservation. In chapter 1, that was crops production and management, we learned how to the methods to preserve and store food grains. But we also have to preserve the cooked food that we make in our homes, because if we leave it out unused, it can be attacked by bacteria and funguses. And a common example is a bread. The unused bread left out in our home in moist conditions is attacked mainly by fungus, and microorganisms spoil our food, just in the case of food poisoning. So, the spoiled food emits bad smell and has a bad taste and a changed color. So these are some of the symptoms of a spoiled food. It emits bad smell, has a bad taste and a changed color. And a spoiling of a food is a chemical reaction also. Paheli, so when we bring some mangoes and we could not eat them for a few days, then later we find that it's spoiled or rotten. This is not only for mangoes. For every type of fruits and vegetables that we bring and we don't use it, it gets rotten, and that is also caused by microorganisms. And we can preserve the food by common methods. It can be chemical methods or normal methods that we can do in our home. First one is chemical method. So mainly salts and edible oils like vegetable oils, etc., are common chemicals generally used to check the growth of microorganisms. Therefore these are called preservatives. We add salt or acid preservatives to pickles to prevent the attack of microorganisms. Sodium benzoate and sodium metabisulfate are common preservatives. These are also used in jams and squashes to check their spoilage. And it can be prevented from common salt too. Common salt has been used to preserve meat and fish for ages. Meat and fish are covered with dry salt to check the growth of bacteria, and it's also used in preserving amla, raw mangoes, and tamarind, etc. Preservation by sugar. Sugar, we know, it's used in the preservation of sweet things like jams, jellies, squashes, etc. And sugar reduces the moisture content, and it stops the growth of bacteria, because bacteria and virus grow where there is moisture. Preservation by oil and vinegar. Use of oil and vinegar prevents spoilage of pickles, because bacteria cannot live in such an environment. They cannot live in an environment of where oil or vinegar is present. Thus, vegetables, fruits, meats, fish, etc. are often preserved by this method. Heat and cold treatments. We have seen that our mother boils the milk before it is stored or used, because boiling kills many of the microorganisms. Similarly, we keep our food in a refrigerator. Low temperature initiates that the growth of microorganisms does not take place. And now we will knowing what is pasteurization. Pasteurization is a process in which any type of food consumed, like milk, for example, is mainly consumed after boiling. So the milk is heated normally to about 70 degrees for 15 to 30 seconds, and then suddenly chilled and stored in any refrigerator. By doing so, it prevents the growth of microorganisms. This process was discovered by Louis Pasteur, and thus it is called pasteurization. So why does it stop the and stops the prevent it prevents the growth of microorganisms and kills it? Because it is in a very hot situation, when it's boiled to a high temperature, and when it suddenly is kept in a chilling temperature, the microorganisms cannot adapt to the environment and thus die. Thus we should always eat or drink milk of pasteurized milks. Storage and packing. We should always store fruits and every vegetable in sealed airtight packets, so that microorganisms cannot attack it. Now we'll be seeing nitrogen fixation and nitrogen cycle. So in last year and last year, in class 6 and 7, we learned about the bacterium rhizobium, and they are the reason how nitrogen is fixed and the fertility of the soil remains. So they are involved in the fixation of nitrogen in leguminous plants. Leguminous plants means pulses like beans, peas, rajma, etc. So rhizobium live in the root nodules of leguminous plants. Examples I gave, and they live a symbiotic relationship. So the plants, the legumes give him shelter and food, and in return, rhizobium gives the plants nitrogen. So we will be seeing how nitrogen fixation happens and how it's again released back to the atmosphere, how the nitrogen amount remains the same. So when the amount of nitrogen is converted into nitrogenous compounds which are used in soil, how does the 78% of the atmospheric nitrogen stay same? We'll be seeing that. So first of all, atmospheric nitrogen cannot directly be used by plants for creating proteins. Proteins are nitrogenous compounds and they need nitrogen to be used. And the soil has nitrogen. But after going plants after plants, the nitrogen gets depleted or completely used out and it runs out. So nitrogen is required and atmospheric nitrogen cannot directly be taken. So rhizobium, the bacteria, takes the atmospheric nitrogen and fixes it into nitrogenous compounds, and then it is converted and it stays in the soil, and it's taken by plants, and the plants are eaten by animals, and when the animals excrete or die, again the nitrogen comes back to the soil, and then the nitrogenous compounds is turned into gaseous nitrogen again by another type of bacteria which convert the nitrogenous compounds into gaseous nitrogen, which is just the opposite of what rhizobium does. And again, so atmospheric nitrogen is formed. So like this, the 78% of the nitrogen is there. Sometimes lightning causes some of the nitrogen to get converted into nitrogenous compounds. So this is how nitrogen cycle happens. So there are 78% of nitrogen gas in the earth and is one of the essential constituents of living organisms. And it is there in proteins, chlorophyll, nucleic acids, vitamins, etc. And the atmospheric nitrogen cannot be directly used, as I told. So certain bacteria and blue-green algae present in the soil fix the nitrogen from the atmosphere, convert it into compounds, and once nitrogen is converted into these usable compounds, it is utilized by the plants from the soil through their by their systems, and then animals feed on the plants and again they excrete and die, because of which it happens. So it's a complete cycle. So when a plant and animal dies, the bacteria and fungi present in the soil decompose it. So that's how again the nitrogen goes back in the atmosphere. As a result, the percentage of nitrogen in the atmosphere always remains more or less constant, and that's why 78% nitrogen or gaseous nitrogen always stays there. So so thank you everyone for watching my video so peacefully, and if you liked it, then please like, share and subscribe my channel and share the video to your more friends so that they can also understand this chapter. Thank you.